Good evening, Central Valley. Welcome to this week's edition of Valley Movers and Shakers. I am Kevin Little, and I'm very excited to bring you this episode tonight. I think we've got two very interesting guests who are going to inspire you, entertain you, and show you that we have a vibrant community here with lots of things going on. Thank you if you have tuned in before, but if you haven't tuned in already, let me just tell you a little bit about what the show is about. Valley Movers and Shakers is based on a premise that we all hear enough bad news, and for a change, we're going to hear some good news on this show. This is a show that focuses on people who are doing positive things in the community, who are building businesses, helping build communities, helping to keep kids going in a positive direction, building on our local traditions, everything that helps a community live and grow. I've said this a few other episodes, and I'll say it again now. Everything you see around you that is, whether it's a business, whether it's a housing development, whether it's a house, it is in existence because somebody had a dream, somebody had a goal, and somebody did everything that it took to fulfill that goal, to cross that finish line. So we've got a couple of great guests here who have crossed finish lines and who are still pursuing other goals, and you will really enjoy hearing from them, and you'll see what it takes to be a mover and shaker here in the Valley. So we've got Joe Gutierrez from Los Banos and Merced County, I should say, and we have Jennifer Neeley from here in Fresno, and both of them, they have very different career paths, but both are very interesting, and we'll get started when we come back, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Valley Movers and Shakers. Once again, I'm Kevin Little, and I'm proud to introduce and excited to introduce our first guest, Joe Gutierrez. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Joe, you have done so much, and not only in your business, in your community service, in your youth development programs that you've done. So I'm just very pleased that you're on the show, and I want to get started right in. You're not somebody who was in any way, shape, or form born with a silver spoon in your mouth, were you?
No, far from that. Far from that. I was born in Mexico, and when I was about 4.5, when my dad was born in Texas and my mom in Mexico, and my dad would commute to Texas to go to work. And then after a while, Mom said, this is no good. We need to go with you. So $25 and fill out an application, and you got your green card back in the day.
Right.
So we moved to Texas, Harlingen, Texas. And from Harlingen, we migrated to California and ended up in Delano. And started in Delano, then went to Merced, and then ended up in my town that I grew up from age 6 in Planada, which is not too far from here.
Right. And you, at a very early age, started working alongside your some of your other family members in the fields, right?
Correct. There's a total of 6 of us siblings. I was the middle child, so I was old enough to work, so we just followed the crops, and anything that's in the valley, I've done it alongside with my parents. And I brought you a picture of when I was a kid picking tomatoes.
And let's show that picture. And then right after I show this picture, I'm going to show, this is the start, and I'm going to show them some of the things you've achieved since then. Now, this is a picture of you and some of your family members when you were young. Where are you in this photograph?
I am the little guy with the hat.
Okay, so right dead center there.
Right dead center.
All right. So what year is this, more or less?
I think I was probably about 10,
Okay.
Yeah, 9 or 10. My little brother behind me is about 5 or 6, and today he's a principal at Merced City Schools.
Fantastic.
My uncle and my aunt are next to me there. But
And from there, you have gone to, and this is from 2017, and this is an award from the Merced County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. The same Joe Gutierrez that was in that photo with the hat, the little guy, was just recently voted 2017's Man of the Year from Merced County.
I was humbled to receive that, and very, very humbling experience, and very grateful to the Merced Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
And again, and I'm no mean to put you on the spot, but we really are proud of your accomplishments.
No.
But this was 5 years ago. You have put in 25 years with State Farm.
That's correct. Started with State Farm in 1988, and just December of this year, will celebrate my 30th anniversary with State Farm.
So how did a young boy go from getting up early, working hard in the fields, to having his own successful insurance business?
It's a long path, and I can share it with you, make it brief. But while in high school, my dad wanted me to get a short career, go to technical school, do something short, come back, and help the family.
Right.
And my two older brothers did that. I didn't want to follow that path. I said, I want to go to college. And my mom was supportive. My dad said, no, stick around and look at all this is yours that I'm building. And I appreciate that. My dad and me passed away about 15 years ago. So, but Dad, I want to go to college. So, long story short, I graduated from Lee Grand High School. We didn't have a high school in Planada, so we had to bus to Lee Grand. Small community.
Right.
Smaller than Planada. Planada is about 2,000 people.
Right. About what, 15, 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes north of Chowchilla?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And 6 miles, Lee Grand was 6 miles from Planada. Ended up going to Merced College. And from Merced College, I transferred on to Stanislaus State University in Turlock. I got my bachelor's in liberal studies with a bilingual cross-cultural emphasis, became a bilingual teacher, got my credential, and I was a school teacher first. I wasn't always a State Farm agent.
Right.
So I taught second graders my first year at Winton Elementary,
Right.
over by Atwater. Back then, Castle Air Force Base was still active.
Right.
Then I taught fourth grade after that, and then after that I taught sixth grade, and then I was starting to do my master's to get my administrative credential to be a principal.
Right. Now, you were probably still a pretty young man.
I was, my first year teaching, I was 25.
Right. And you already had your aspirations on moving up and being a principal.
And my goal was, I had 5-year goals.
Right.
My goal was to, in 5 years, either be a principal or vice principal, or move into the direction of entrepreneurship, have a business somewhere. I have no idea what.
Where did you get that drive from, Joe?
I knew that I didn't want to work in the fields all my life when I was younger, and I wanted to do a lot more, and I knew that I had the ability, the capacity to do a lot more. I had no idea. Nobody in my family went to college, so I didn't know what that experience was like. But I knew that was going to be the way out, and I pursued it. Just persevered.
So, at some point, you decided to move into the business world and into the insurance industry. And how did that come about?
Kind of a funny story. I was a senior at Stanislaus State,
right,
and I was working part-time as a college recruiter. I would go to the high schools and recruit high school students to college, and predominantly Latino minority students to the college. So my boss stepped out to go get a cup of coffee, and I said, "Hey, I forget his name. He come back to me anyway. I told him, could I use your office?
Right.
I got to make some phone calls, schedule some appointments. Sure, go ahead, Jesse Cuevas, and he passed away since. But so big office, big desk, big chair. So I sat there, kicked my feet up.
Right.
The secretary comes over and says, "Mr. Gutierrez, a couple of men want to see you." And I said,
Me?
Send them in.
Right.
So turns out to be State Farm Insurance recruiters from the corporate office.
Right.
So they share their whole story about how State Farm works and what they're doing. So I said, you know what, you don't want to talk to me, you want to talk to my boss. He went to get a cup of coffee.
Right.
He'll be right back.
Yeah.
And then they said, no, we'd be interested in you. I'm like,
and here you are, a guy in his mid-20s, right?
and at that time I was about 21, 22.
The early 20s.
Yeah. And so I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm finishing my degree and I'm going to be a teacher, and maybe we'll talk in the future. And so they didn't lose my number.
Uh-huh.
So about 2 years into teaching,
Right.
now I'm fast forward, I'm teaching in Winton. I get a phone call back, and they asked me if I wanted to check into it again. So
Right.
I said, well, here's part of my goal, right? My 5-year goal.
Sure.
Either business or administration. So I was already working on my master's for business and for my
For your teaching credential?
No, for my administrative credential.
Administrative credential, okay. Because after you get the teaching credential, the next step up, if you want to be in administration, you have to also have an administrative credential.
Right. So I decided to take the business route.
Okay.
And writing that resignation letter to my school district was the hardest thing I ever did, because I love teaching.
And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but you still have dedicated a significant part of your life to improving the quality of education.
And you can take the teacher out of the classroom,
Right.
but you can't take the classroom out of the teacher.
There you go.
If you will. And I still continue to advocate and help and get involved in education.
Right.
So I took the job in December of 1988. I opened up my office, my State Farm office, in Los Baños, and been there ever since.
Now, were you new to Los Baños at that time?
I was new. I knew the community.
Right.
But when State Farm says here's your choice. You got Los Baños now,
Right.
or you can wait a year to be in Turlock or Merced, because I lived in Turlock.
Right.
And I said, what the heck do I want to go do in Los Baños? There's nothing
Right.
there.
Right.
But it was a blessing in disguise. There was 11,000 people at the time. Today there's about 40,000.
Right.
I was single. I was young. I didn't know anybody. Today I have a beautiful wife. I have 3 children, and half the town's related to me.
All from that move to Los Baños.
All from that move, and it's
So
a
let me just kind of take a snapshot here.
Mhm.
Okay, you're starting a new career, right? You're bold enough not only to start that new career, but open your own business, not study or work under somebody else. Move to a new town.
Yep.
All of that in one fell swoop.
Oh, and I said, what's the worst thing that could happen?
That's right.
If I don't make it, I still got my college degree. I still got my teaching credential, and I would go back to teaching in a heartbeat, and I'd probably be not just a principal. I don't know. I'd probably be a superintendent of schools today had I stayed. I often wonder. Yeah.
Well, it seems like you turned out really well. Well, we're going to take a very short break, and then we're going to come back and continue with Mr. Gutierrez, show you how well he's done in his business and some of the other things he's done in the community. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Valley Moves and Shakers, and we're continuing our discussion with Joe Gutierrez. Joe, it's fair to say that you more than landed on your feet after your move to Los Baños.
Yes, it's an awesome community. The community's so tight knit, and everybody's so caring. It's just, I was fortunate to land there. Like I said, there was 11,000 people when I got there, and then the housing boom just all of a sudden begun.
Right.
And so as the town grew, I got to meet my clients. They became not just clients; they became, good friends, and some became family because, like I said, now half the town is related to me one way or another.
And your insurance practice, can you tell a little bit about the type of insurance business that you have? Is it a multi-faceted, or do you have a particular focus?
Well, State Farm is, nationally known, and they have a very good reputation in the industry. So State Farm we handle, all your personal lines insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, business, life insurance, some health coverage. We basically try to help our client with everything, and so that we become their personal agent.
Right.
So anytime something happens, I mean, we're there. You've seen the commercial, like
That's
a
right.
good neighbor, State Farm is there, and the guy pops up.
Right. That's you. In Los Banos, that's you. In Merced County, that's you.
That's me.
All right.
That's me.
So how has your business grown? Like today, Joe Gutierrez, State Farm. Tell me how well your practice is doing.
I've started almost scratch, which means I didn't have any clients, and today I've got about 4,000 accounts, which is good size. It's not huge. It's not small, but
For
a big
town of 40,000 people, that's pretty huge.
That's good
Yeah.
size. Yeah. So, but I got to give kudos to the best employees in the world. To Sylvia, Rhonda. I mean, they helped me. If it weren't for my licensed staff, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the community stuff that I do.
All right.
But State Farm gives you that flexibility and that freedom to be able to do a lot of community stuff.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned your community work, because in addition to heading a thriving insurance business, you also for many years now have been a trustee at the Merced College District, correct?
Yes, I'm in my 6th year as a trustee for Merced Community College. It kind of happened by accident.
Tell us this accident.
Well, one of the professors says, "You need to be a trustee." I said, "What do I want to do that for?" Professor Withers. And so ever since I got on the board, it was a little rocky the first few years, but these last 2 years were just been awesome. Last year I was the board chair, and first Latino ever to be a board chair for Merced Community College, and it was just an awesome experience.
And again, it seems like I keep putting you on the spot, and I know you're a very humble guy, but as a successful Latino businessman in Merced County, you've been a trailblazer in a number of ways, not just being the first presiding trustee, but in many ways.
Well, I've done some other events in our town that in our community fair, the Los Banos May Day Fair.
And that's in the spring.
That's in the spring. That's in May. And the Cinco de Mayo, there was really no Cinco de Mayo, no cultural type of events.
Right.
So I said, I want to start something.
So we've got a fair that coincides with Cinco de Mayo in a community that has a large Latino population, and so you felt very strongly there needs to be an element to this fair that recognizes that.
And so I started a youth mariachi competition.
Right.
And a youth mariachi are kids that are 3rd grade, 9, 10, 11, all the way up to high school. And Fresno kind of had a little bit to do with this because when I did the first Cinco de Mayo, it was just a typical celebration. And I invited Roosevelt High School Mariachi Band.
Right.
From Fresno.
And that's a school here that has a large performing arts concentration to it. Right?
And so I knew I forget his name now, but the director at the time, I think he's retired. And I invited him and the Fresno Jazz Band. I think they also had a jazz band. So this was part of their curriculum, which I felt, I found intriguing, because being an ex-educator, I thought this is awesome. Every high school should have it,
right?
Especially in the Central Valley. So that kind of spearheaded the idea of doing a competition. And so my first competition, Roosevelt High School was invited,
right?
And a mariachi band from from San Jose, and one from Stockton. And it was just amazing. It was amazing. So, so fast forward about 5 years later, this competition has grown, and it's huge. And I got bands coming from as far as Porterville, Bakersfield, and as far north of Sacramento, and in the Bay Area.
So this almost immediately proved to be a much needed outlet for people who were interested in studying and performing mariachi.
And it was not only did the performers love it, but the crowd went nuts. They're just watching a 10-year-old blast the tune and sing. I mean, it was amazing. And
that's fantastic. Now, and you brought one of your flyers from about 10 years ago, which shows how it fits into the Los Banos Fair, and this is and here it is. It's the Cinco de Mayo celebration 2007, and this is by 2007 it had been going on for how many years, Joe?
At that point, it's probably about I think we stopped like in 08, so that was about my 4th, 5th year, something like that. I don't.
So what are some of the tangible benefits that you saw my kids get from having that outlet?
A lot of those young people were so talented and so amazing that they were in a way a role model to the audience, and at the same time the audience, I had a panel of judges, and they were all role models to the performers and the audience. I had judges, I had college presidents, I had attorneys, I had all these judges that were they're all role models. I had a professor from Fresno State that was one of my judges at one point, and they were all Latinos. So it was an awesome event, and one of my goals was because I always have goals. I said, okay, what am I going to do with this? So one of my goals was to eventually have a high school mariachi band at our local high school, and it happened.
And your local high school, Los Banos High?
Los Banos High School. And but unfortunately, after a year, the professor moved out of state, and so it didn't continue. But there's hope that maybe in the future we do it again.
Right.
But then last year, Delhi High School, which is north of Merced,
right,
the superintendent calls me and says, "Hey, I understand you're familiar with this. Could you help us start a mariachi band?"
So now there's a high school mariachi band at Delhi High.
Correct, and it's their first year. They've already performed a couple of songs, and Channel 30 went down there and interviewed them.
Well, that's fantastic.
So hopefully that's the beginning of other high schools to start doing the same thing.
Now, I didn't want to give your role as a trustee for the Merced Community College Board short shrift. What are some of the accomplishments that the board has made since you've been on there that you're most proud of?
I think the biggest accomplishment is that the board is very tight. They're very good. They work well together. Oftentimes boards have differences.
Yeah, there can be a lot of infighting, a lot of feuds.
And there was the first 4 years, but since then it's been just heaven. Everybody's working well together, and we got a new president who's doing an outstanding job. we've kind of turned the atmosphere around in the college community, from from people being upset to now everybody loves their job, everybody comes to work, and everybody's excited. They even like the board.
Right. Well, there you go.
So, that and it's just programs. We're building new programs. We've got we got the main campus in Merced, and then we got a satellite campus in Los Baños. So we don't have all the services in Los Baños as Merced does, but we're starting to get more services. And this coming semester, we're going to have our very first career tech education class, which is a welding class for our students in the West Side.
Well, that's fantastic. Joe, one of the things I like to do on the show before the guest says farewell is give you an opportunity to make some comments directly to our audience. People who maybe are thinking about doing some of the things that you've done, but maybe just are a little bit reticent, don't maybe have the self-confidence to do that, maybe are scared of the risks involved. What would you tell people about the importance of just trying to do everything you can to serve your community and to achieve as much as you can? What can you tell us?
Well, it's very rewarding. It's difficult to start something, to say, you know what, I want to do, I have these goals, but where do I start? Well, you got to dig deep inside. And anything you want to accomplish, you can accomplish if you set your mind to it. There's going to be obstacles in the way, but we need to get over those obstacles. And if you're resilient and you're determined, I would tell, especially young people, don't give up. Look for mentors. If you're in the area, come see me and I'll give you some advice. I'm an educator at heart. State Farm is kind of, I educate my clients as well, so I'm using those skills there. But don't give up. Work hard, and good things will happen.
Joe Gutierrez, thank you very much for coming on
Kevin.
the show.
It's been a pleasure.
And you're a living proof that you're limited in life only by the audacity of your dreams and your willingness to persevere.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Valley Movers and Shakers. Once again, I'm Kevin Little, and I'm proud to introduce our second guest, Jennifer Neeley. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're very welcome.
And you go by Gigi to those who know you well?
Yes.
Is it okay if I
yes.
refer you? Okay,
my
great.
family call me Gigi, so I'm happy to let you extend an arm to you and let you be a member of my family temporarily.
There you go. There you go. So, can you explain to us first and foremost what your connection is to the Valley?
So as I was saying to you before, I went to Clovis High School, and I spent about half my childhood in the Clovis area. And it's funny because I really am coming back to the Valley. It's very important to say that because I feel like there's huge parts. Everything's grown so much.
Oh, the community's changed a lot.
I know. It's incredible to me. Like, I knew the Tower District and that sort of thing, but I never, there are parts of Fresno I've never seen. I'm very sure of that. Whereas before, when we were little, when you lived in Clovis, we didn't really have a grocery store, so we'd have to drive to Fresno. I remember different Vons opening, and we'd go to the different ones, and they'd give out pot holders and stuff like that. Right. And it was always like, it took, it was on country roads and stuff. So so I always make that distinction because it was very different. So the first part of my childhood was in the Bay Area. So I grew up as a little kid with, their grandparents working at semiconductor plants and stuff and working on these things called computers. Right. And that was kind of interesting.
Newfangled devices back then.
Yes. It was like, It was interesting foreshadowing to what my career ended up being for a good chunk of my life. So anyway, we had the first Pong because I think my step-grandmother worked at Atari, that was just pixels, huge pixels on the screen. So, yeah.
Now, not to keep our viewers in suspense, but you do have a business that's related to technology, and why don't you explain what it is that you do?
So I'm a social media marketing expert. I had a career in television news for a number of years and went to Columbia Journalism School, worked for broadcast networks, and quickly transitioned even within those networks to early digital. And it was really interesting pioneering that as a woman, a young woman. I remember being 27 and at the table, but being questioned about, why are you here? How old are you even?
Right.
And I was 27 years old, heading up a department at ABC, which was, digital media. I was one of the first cyber journalists. It's on a business card I still have.
Right.
So after journalism school and then just having a lot of the business experience of being a department head and coming up in digital in media very early in the late 90s, early 2000s.
And just to put things in context, back then everyone knew that the internet was this, big thing, but no one really knew all of the possibilities that it could render, or maybe some did.
I lived in San
Many
Francisco, so it felt very much in the
Right.
bubble I was in.
Right.
We were watching people, the public works people tear up streets, and we'd be, oh, that's another T3 line going in, and getting
Right.
very excited about that. And
Right.
so yeah, I think it was very much a community. It was a tech boom, and then there was a bust, and then there's been another boom and bust, and we've continued to have a lot of successes amongst companies going public, but. At that time, I bought my first domain name, which was jenniferneeley.com in 1997.
Right.
So I was very, and I think
I got my first cell phone in 97.
it was huge, I'm sure, right?
Right.
The car phone, it was probably nailed to the dashboard.
That's right.
But, and I think also I went to undergrad at Berkeley, and I think that, I had done a research apprenticeship, and that helped as well, because we were using the internet then. I was using the internet certainly to help my professor find background research for a book he was working on.
Right.
So I think that helped. I think being exposed to those things definitely helped my career trajectory.
Right. Now, you obviously, had the training, had the goods, and were on the path to excel in a more traditional journalistic outlet, but you decided to veer off and do something that at that point was off the beaten path.
Yeah.
And what encouraged you to do that?
Well, one of the companies I've done marketing for over the years is Apogee. They have a tagline for some of their conferences called Adapt or Die. And I say my career path in marketing and in news media has been adapt or die, because what was happening was I would get places and I'd hit what I call the digital ceiling, the glass ceiling, where basically you have the skills and you have the knowledge, and there's no place else to go. There's no challenge left. And as a news person, a lot of people spend time going from station to station and finding new challenges and going up the market. So market size and local news is really important. In sort of a more traditional broadcast scenario would be getting the anchor slot, on nightly news or whatever.
Right.
That used to be the end all be all. Of course, in the YouTube generation, that doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
And even other platforms like Periscope and different ones that have come and gone, that's certainly not the case today. And to millennials, that might sound really foreign, but then that was the big deal. Right. So the reason I say adapt or die is it was to make the most money, I guess, and to find the most success, very Clovis High School driven, I suppose.
Well, no,
I went into...
There's nothing, success in all of its permutations should be strived for.
Right. So I think to find challenge, to find acceptance, and to be, I think, a woman that understood a great deal of technology, because at that time you really had to understand the technology to manage a department of it. I mean, you were coding along with the rest. Right. So to come up that way, I think to make the most of my skills, I ended up creating my own business, and that just made the most sense.
And the name of your business currently, is it Your Name Consulting, or?
It's J&D Global, but
Global.
we're in the process of going through a sale. So life is changing, as
Life
we'll
is still
talk
changing.
about later. But yeah, it's a big transition. So my agency's been based out of lots of different countries, actually. Mm-hmm. I lived in England for a number of years, the Bay Area before that, and I've spent time in Los Angeles. So
But you're based right here in the Valley.
At the moment, yes.
That's good.
So yeah, my family's here, so I always find reasons to come back. But I think that in families, everybody gets a turn. I found myself in England going through a divorce, and my brother has a chronic illness, and so anybody that has any kind of illness in their family will know, if you can come together and kind of spend time and give each other a help, it's a wonderful thing. And for me, they've been as much my mom and brother have been as much a help to me in this life, in this transitional path I've been on over the last few years, as I have been to them, maybe even more so. So it's been wonderful to be able to be with them. They're here in the Valley, and so I see it as a real gift to have this time with them.
That's fantastic. So social media marketing, for those who maybe know as much as I do or maybe less, can you explain what it is and what you typically do for your clients?
Sure. So social media marketing is using social networks to market your business. So it's leveraging the power of word of mouth in a form that hopefully you can create metrics around. In my business as a digital marketing expert, really beyond social media, so most people know social media, so it's easier to sort of say that, but really I'm a digital marketing strategist, and so when a client comes to me, it's really looking at how we get everything from search, being visible in search, which is critically important, to being visible in social networks. Every touch point really of your online profile is optimized and is also being updated constantly, because each social network, each search engine rewards in different ways, but usually around publishing new content. They want you, it's a publisher perish kind of world, although not academic at all.
And you have to have different strategies depending on what social media platform
which platform
you're
you want to
about.
use, sure, and also just from a Google search perspective, you want to be publishing regularly. Google has said it wants you to publish X amount this often to be visible, right? And realize that we're in a world of AI, and so everybody's search is unique. So when you search something, all of your past history, depending on which device you're using, all of your history and everything's optimized to be personalized to your experience. Same for me, same to everyone. So if my mom and I were just actually having a conversation about this today, and it was a really great example because she's an avid Twitter user. So, she was saying, oh, somebody didn't respond to something after I had posted something. And I said, well, you realize that no Twitter feed is the same. So what you see is not the same as what she saw when she replied, or what I see, because it's taking all of your devices, if you were on, depending on which device you're on, but she was on a Verizon device. Verizon sells that to the social network. So all that information is available to them to customize your experience. Now, there's a lot of question about how ethical that is, how legal it is, and we're getting into an era where I think it's pretty certain that Facebook and other social networks will undergo regulation, serious regulation, because there are reasons to be concerned and more aware of what you're sharing. And certainly they violated their own promises to a lot of users. But regardless, that's sort of a side thing. But I think, understanding the complexities of how each device, each social network is meant to be optimized is really the importance of the strategy.
And we're not going to ever go back to the days where traditional marketing strategies are going to be effective, and your company helps businesses understand and take full advantage, or the greatest advantage, of this exciting and uncertain new social media platform-based world in which we now live, and we'll be living apparently for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, it is the age we're in. We've got a whole generation of people that have now grown up with nothing but digital profiles, and the influencer marketing that we're seeing now. I was actually just discussing a research project earlier with I'm on a nonprofit board, and we were discussing how we're going to use this grant money we've gotten to actually fund data drill down to see how effective we are for males versus females in this particular area. And it'll be interesting to me to cross that over with the influencers, or the so-called influencers in that category, and see if they actually match up. A lot of really interesting research happening.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, sometimes when, I've got a teenager, and, and I deal with some younger people in my work, and some people say we live in the soundbite generation, where even your mode of communication now is different than perhaps it was when I was my son's age. Mm-hmm. And how, in terms of marketing strategies, do you have to recognize that and take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think that we've been marketing to a soundbite generation for a long time, for probably at least 10 years, a good 10 years. And, I've worked in local media here in Fresno, and I have friends in the news media, so I'm often asked to go comment on KC24 or CBS 47, and they'll ask me different questions about different trends that they see in the market. And I get asked a lot, especially on KC24, about how do I protect my kids and how do I keep them safe. And I always say that the best thing to do is exactly what you've done, is ask the communication of what is the gap, what is the difference between the way I communicate and the way that my children communicate. And I'd say a lot of it is cracking the code. There's some great resources online for just understanding what emojis can mean to young people.
Right.
I think recently people have found out what an eggplant means, and that might be important if you don't already know what an eggplant means. If your kids are texting it, you need to find out.
Okay.
So I'll just gently prescribe that one for you. But yeah, I think there's the traditional stuff where, like, you and I would probably laugh with our parents about what does LOL mean,
Right.
Because there's always a variation between laugh out loud and I forget. There's some others that people come out.
ROFL, right? Rolling on the floor laughing.
We're rolling on the floor laughing, or they're different. There are different variations, but you'll hear kids say all the time, like AF.
Right.
Those are curse words, so we're not going to say them here, but that's a typical expression that you'll hear. So it's important to decode that, and it's especially important to have access to devices. So whether it's a social network or it's the phone itself, make sure you have parental controls on for as long as you can negotiate with your child to have them, and know what you're reviewing. So that means giving yourself some education. And everybody says they don't have time and that they're time pressed, but really it's probably the greatest gift you'll give yourself is to really understand, it's not like these things are changing every day. It's just that they have changed between our generations.
So social media awareness is not only something that someone in the business of social media marketing needs to be familiar with, but just parents, people in general. This is the world in which we live. We have to have a greater awareness.
Parents, teachers. I mean, you can imagine how much teachers probably already know and can share with parents. That's a resource I tell people, that are parents. I say go to teachers and ask. On the other side of that, I also encourage them to talk to their teachers about what technology their children are learning in school. I tell a lot of people that have kids here in the Valley to make sure their kids can code a website by the time they probably leave middle school, maybe 6th grade. It's super easy. Everybody can do it. It's so plug and play now. There's no reason that they can't do that. Every kid should learn to code. They should not leave a school in this Valley without learning how to code. Something
as fundamental as the 3 R's were when I was in school.
Right. To me, it's an additional language. So it's just like if you have a language requirement in schools, we know that allows you to get into better universities. This is allowing your child to have a platform to build a business of their own by the time they're done. I mean, by the time they're ready to do it. But I mean, certainly they could leave high school and we're in an era where that could be a very, very profitable business indeed. I'm not suggesting that they should do that right away, but they definitely need to at least have that skill set, and especially girls. Girls can code, and other programs online are fantastic resources for young ladies to jump in.
In your opinion, how well are many schools doing in embracing the new techno reality that we have and giving children opportunities to learn coding and to become technologically savvy? I know a lot of things children are doing on their own for the better or the worse, but how are schools doing?
Well, I think that your schools are influenced, one, by their environment. So of course schools in the Silicon Valley, they're getting grants and other monies from the people that live there that are running these multi-billion-dollar corporations to learn these things. So those kids, you may say, are greatly advantaged, but at the same time, like you just pointed out, so many of these resources are available online. And again, because it's in the interest of every social network, every multi-billion-dollar corporation to make these resources available, if they don't have coders, the H-1B visa discussion that went on before the election of President Trump was very heated, and I had a company hire me specifically me to oversee their social media because Google was acquiring them during that time. And because developers are so needed in Silicon Valley, we don't have enough coders that are American at this moment in time, that are talented, that can take the needs and wants of the user experience, the customer experience into account, that we really need an H-1B visa program to allow people to come in and run the coding for all of these major platforms.
Right.
What that means is there's a huge skills gap amongst American workers. So to me, that's a huge opportunity for every school to really fill that with these kids if they learn. But make sure your school's only going to be as good as, one, the location, and two, the parents. Parents have to be asking for these programs, because as much as teachers are probably extremely aware of what their classrooms may need, if parents aren't asking, then they're not going to know, and asking at the highest level, they're not going to be held accountable for making sure children have those resources diverted from other programs.
We as parents have to be proactive and let our
Absolutely.
schools know what
we have elections coming up in November again. We just had, primary elections, but we have elections coming up in November, and it's a good point to remind people, absolutely make sure you understand everyone that's running for everything, and if there's a superintendent running, if there's a district supervisor, if there's a county board member, if there's anything where they're running for something, make sure that you understand if they have an influence over education, where they stand on making sure that your children have access to the money needed for the best materials, the best training, the best education.
Now, Gigi, I know that I do want to leave some time to talk about your yoga practice, because I know that's a significant part of your life, but I do want to ask you one wrap-up question on this topic. Both in your business and just in general, what is one trend that you see on the horizon that you are focusing on in terms of keeping your business up to date?
I think there's so many. I think that one is keeping your ear to the ground. I think virtual and augmented reality is a huge piece of where we're going, and the gamification of our lives. Artificial intelligence is a big one. Those are undeniably important parts of where business is headed. And in terms of social networks, watching what Snapchat is doing, watching what influencer marketing is doing, and the metrics around those, and for me, the research around them to really quantify and verify for my clients what is effective content, what is an effective message.
And so AI is really, artificial intelligence is really going to change social media and just the way in which we interact with technology in the coming years.
It's going to change everything, because it can take the place of many people. So, what we decide to allow is going to be interesting, because we've allowed Facebook, as we were talking before, Facebook's been allowed this long runway, and those of us that have been in the industry for a long time and on Facebook, I was on Facebook before it was open to everyone, because I was at Columbia at the time for graduate school, and Columbia Dartmouth opened up, and all of us were on Friendster at the time, believe it or not. Long ago, Friendster before MySpace. So, I remember, and we really didn't understand the use of it. And then I remember I was in the Silicon Valley when Facebook, quote unquote, opened up, when they allowed app developers to come and develop on the platform, and everybody had, there was Farmville, and different animals had little takeoffs from Farmville, and then all these different games became a big trend. So I think making sure we have oversight over our artificial intelligence and participating in that ethical debate is important and needs to be pushed for. I don't feel like we're having that enough.
That conversation.
It's not public enough. It's happening behind closed doors. But it's happening behind closed doors at public corporations, where we can all be shareholders and should pay attention and be participatory.
So let's switch gears, because I know wellness is a big part of your life, particularly the practice of yoga. Can you tell me how that first became something that was very important to you?
So, taking you back, I think about 5 years, I was married, living in England, and I was teaching one course every term at San Francisco State as part of their social media certificate program. So I would travel back 4 times a year, and I would visit my family during that time because I wasn't teaching every day. And during one of the visits back, there were a number of things that happened. There was a petrol strike. There was a various things that happened. So I didn't end up going back when my flight was scheduled. Fast forward like a month, and my gallbladder died in my body. Ooh. And talk about a health check. That's a huge health check. So at that stage, I really realized it was a wake-up call that my life needed to change. And through a progression of a lot of things, including moving back, deciding that I was going to be or hang out, at least at that time, in the Valley for a bit, spend time with family, check in with my loved ones, I really decided that I wanted to make my health a priority because I could. I had that luxury of forethought and having seen what happens if you let your lifestyle get out of hand.
So how has that benefited you? And I know it's not something that's only personal. You've also shared that with others.
So what happened after that was it led me on this long journey, and I lost 160 pounds naturally. So you can imagine fantastic. Through that process, you learn a heck of a lot. So I had the great fortune of a fantastic traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, acupuncturist that I worked with to really understand food as medicine. I studied that. I had a great endocrinologist I was checking in with weekly to make sure I was hitting the milestones I wanted to, and then easing into exercise because I weighed almost 300 pounds. So when you're that heavy, but then getting me more toned, and so I lost my first 107 pounds. My hair started falling out, so they said, okay, wait, you're going too fast. We need you to stabilize. Right. So for about 1.5 years, I stabilized at that weight. And then I just, decided, okay, well, I have these extra pounds to lose. It was like 50-some pounds. Where I can just calorie count, on my app on my phone and just be accountable. And I did Weight Watchers. I didn't do the point system, to be fair, but I used MyFitnessPal and did my calorie counting, had my accountability of checking in, and a community of people to check in with every week. But what started to change was my whole mindset. Like, as I was losing the weight, I was actually shedding this sort of armor. What I realized was that this business exterior of needing to be, the hard woman that's always negotiating the deals, needed to kind of shed too. And part of finding yoga was finding the softer side of myself. And so it's a real passion of mine to continue that education and to continue it into communities that might need it. I suffer from anxiety, and I found incredible anxiety relief. So there have been actually other health reasons that I've stuck with yoga, and I complement that with other forms of exercise. But I really see as my primary passion is yoga, Ayurvedic medicine. Of course, traditional Chinese medicine is still a big part of my life. But we're very blessed to have some great people in the Valley that I've been able to kind of find a home with.
That's fantastic.
And I want to encourage other people to kind of find their own way and not look. There is no one pill. It's funny when people ask me, or they ask me for a before and after picture. They say, well, what did you do? And there's nothing exciting about saying calorie counting.
Right.
Because that's not all it is anyway. But I mean, it's really a whole lifestyle change.
So I wanted to give you one final opportunity to talk to our audience, like I do most of our guests. And here's the person that I think really needs to hear from you. Someone who has a demanding career, hasn't been able to find a balance between success in their business and personal wellness. And tell them why it's important and what's the first step that they need to do and move in that direction.
I think it's different for every person, and I think it takes a little bit of introspection. And if I was to talk to myself then, I would say, one, you have to make time for yourself, period. The days of, and I think Gen Xers are really guilty of this, more so than millennials. We should look at millennials and admire them. I know many Xers that have businesses like I do, and they get frustrated with millennials and call them the snowflake generation. And they, I think you really need to see the good in that, in the fact that they do prioritize, many millennials prioritize their life, and they'll tell you, no, I will or won't do this because my children will be home, or I want to prioritize children in the first place. Those are all great things. Learn from that. The reason the trend has gone towards people being or finding a balance is because you have to find it. I remember so often early in my career, people would sort of almost brag about how little sleep they got. Sleep is essential. So if you're going to do one thing for yourself and you're going to prioritize yourself, give yourself at least 7 hours of sleep every night. Ariana Huffington can do it. She founded the Huffington Post, sold it to AOL for a lot of money, and she's created Thrive Global. We can learn from her example. I've done the same thing. I've prioritized sleep. You got to do that. You can't lose weight. You can't do a lot of things. You can't function at your best unless you sleep. So that's number one. Make time for yourself, and once you do, sleep, and then get some mild activity going. And I chose walking initially. I'm actually a certified fitness instructor for walking because I feel so passionately about it. But it started for me as just, I travel a lot for work. I have this demanding career, and it's something that no matter where I am, I can do. You know, we have the great fortune of living in California. You know, if people complain about the sunshine and the heat, I remind them we can still go out and walk in it. It doesn't have to be heavy activity, light activity. 5 minutes can lower your risk of diabetes if you do it every other day.
That's fantastic.
So, I mean, these are the baby steps of it all. And then I'd say to people that have families or are thinking about having a family, really instill those fundamentals in your kids. Make sure that they prioritize sleep. Make sure all the food in your house. A lot of times I hear from moms, or I'll even hear at Weight Watchers meetings because I'm a lifetime member now, and I go to meetings from time to time, or people ask me questions on the app, and they'll say, how do I eat well when I've got all these temptations in the house? Well, my thought is your kids of all people should be taught what's best for their body, not what's right or wrong, because you can always have your food, any food can be eaten in moderation, even a cronut. It's not going to it's not going to be the end of the world if you have a cronut. So stop the self-criticism. Let yourself have what you need to have every once in a while, but make your staples in the home healthy ones. Nice, good amount of balanced protein. That are, lean meats are great. If you want to go to legumes, like some sort of bean and a rice or a quinoa, that's a really good thing. Just have those in the house. So you're teaching your kids the building blocks. They understand they need a complete amino acid to survive. They understand they need lots of vegetables to survive, carbohydrates. And if you're working out a lot, bringing in an oatmeal in the morning so your kids have the brain power. I grew up not eating a breakfast, and I had a massive eating disorder as a girl in high school, wanting to be fit and look like the big supermodels of the time. And, I just stopped eating and lived on Diet Coke. Now I don't drink anything carbonated because I choose not to. And, I feel so much better and so much more energetic. The person I was 5 years ago that was almost 300 pounds didn't feel fabulous and energetic, and my outlook on life reflected that. And guess what that meant? Fewer business opportunities, because people don't want to do business with miserable people.
There you go. Gigi, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
You and our first guest have inspired me. People who take life by the horns and really, really try to fulfill their potential in every way.
Yeah, he does have a great story too.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
That'll do it for tonight's episode. Thank you for tuning in.
CentralValleyTalk.com